Every day you make the journey. You get up, you go through the same routine, but you just don't feel fulfilled. Your day begins and ends with the exact same thought. Why am I even doing this? What is the purpose? Why don't I feel rewarded for all the hard work that I'm doing? And the truth is because you built something that you never even wanted. Maybe you built it for the money. Maybe you had a belief that once it was able to stand on its own, you would be free. Maybe even you thought this time would be different. But in the end, you and I both know it's the exact same thing. The only thing that makes it different is the story that you tell yourself. But listen, I get it. It started out as a great vision, but somewhere along the way, you decided to compromise that vision for any number of reasons. You couldn't generate the sales to sustain the vision. You couldn't come up with a marketing plan that provided enough leads. You couldn't figure out a way to automate the company so that you just had time to be free and create. Or you couldn't develop the systems to make the company efficient. Or it could be that you just couldn't hire the right people to support the vision and help sustain the company long term. So listen, I get it, because I was you. And that's why we started Smash. So our biggest purpose and our biggest focus is to take something that you serve right now and move that thing over to something that serves you. So I have one question for you. Are you finally ready to take your vision and your voice and build that company that you've wanted for years? The one that finally gives you the ability to be free and create.
Make sure I'm recording, man, because I've done these and not recorded it.
Oh yeah, those are the worst.
They're the worst. So first of all, welcome to the Awaken Entrepreneur Show. Super excited to get to chat with you. I've been following your story for a long time. Initially came across you through Wake Up Warrior.
Oh yeah.
Back in, I think it would have been maybe 2015 or maybe even earlier, like the early
yeah,
days.
2013 was the first time that I went through.
So you're one of the guys that have blazed a trail for so many entrepreneurs to make serious changes in their lives. And again, I'm really appreciative of your time today to hear more about how you're helping impact entrepreneurs.
Awesome.
So I guess to begin with, your story, like how did you actually become an entrepreneur? What was it that led you to, get into business?
Yeah, so right out of school, out of college, the first thing I did was I took a job as a marketing coordinator, a marketing director for an apartment, a group of REIT, so real estate investment trust group that built apartment complexes all across the US. And my responsibility was to go into these new developments and essentially come up with like a marketing strategy to fill them up. When we opened a new one here in St. Louis, and I was out working that one, working to get it filled up, built the marketing strategy to get it filled up. And we had what is still known today as the fourth largest catastrophic hailstorm in the US, right? So really catastrophic. It took out like half the city, did a lot of damage to a lot of buildings and property and things like that. A bunch of guys that came into town to work that storm were driving like really nice trucks, really nice cars, all of that good stuff. And I was trying to figure out like, what do they do? Like these guys came out of nowhere. They're like nomads. I didn't know what they did. So one day I went outside when a few of them were kind of hanging out by the pool. And I'm just like, tell me about what you do. Like, what do you guys do? So I inquired about what they do. And I said, that sounds fun. It sounds a little risky, but it sounds fun. You guys got to go across the US anytime there's a storm and put homes and businesses back together. And they were like, you ought to come out and try it. Like you're an outgoing guy. You ought to come out and see if you could do it. And so I went out with them one weekend. The first weekend I went out, I sold 11 jobs. I was young, so I didn't really equate what that meant in my mind. We were door knocking, going door to door, talking to people about the storm that had happened and what it took to put their house back to pre-storm condition. And then they were like, yeah, that's pretty good. Like most guys don't go out and do that, right out of the gate. My job was to basically go knock the door, get us up on a roof, do an inspection, get them to sign what is known in the industry as a contingency agreement, which lets us work with their insurance company to get it back to pre-storm conditions. So the next weekend I did it again, signed another 8. So at that point in time, when we finished that day, I sat down with somebody and I'm like, so if I had to equate this in dollars and cents, right? I signed 19 agreements in the last 2 weekends. What does that equate to in money? And the guy said about $40,000. So I said, I'm right out of college. I'm making, 60 grand a year, full benefits, the whole works. And in 2 weekends, I end up making more than I do an entire year. So they're like, yeah. And they're like, but, be honest, a good first year rep will make about 120 grand a year. And I was like, holy crap. Like, so I got to go knock doors all day long. I got to talk to somebody and a good rep will make 120 grand a year in their first year. They're like, yeah, that's right. So I literally the next Monday, I went in and gave my 2-week notice. I called my parents and I was like, I just quit my job. Like I'm going into sales full time. My parents were like, you're nuts. Like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
So I went into sales, and long story short, the company that I ended up selling for right out of the gate, within about 5 to 6 months, they decided to leave and go chase another storm that happened throughout the US. I got stuck with about $40,000 of unpaid commissions. And so what I did was I took all of the jobs that they left behind. Like they left a whole lot of work on the table. We're not planning on performing the work. They kind of left the customers high and dry. And I took all those jobs on and started a business with it. So that's how I became an entrepreneur. I saw an opportunity. I saw a chance at something greater than what I was currently doing. I figured worst case scenario, I crash and burn, but I learned a whole new skill set. So I jumped on it, right?
Beautiful.
That's pretty much it.
So you had the bug pretty early. You took the lead.
Oh yeah.
So taking that on and just running it, those early days of business. So I'm guessing this is sort of pre the 2008 crash, the real estate.
Oh yeah. There's a whole story around that too. But yeah, this was like 2000.
Okay. Beautiful. And so those first few years of business, did your business model change much, or was it essentially still, working specifically with homeowners and contractors, and what was the business model for those early years?
Yeah, it changed a lot, mostly because the person that I went into business with right out of the gate, after about year 2, and knowing that we should have made a lot more money than what we made based on the volume of sales that we had created, myself and some other people quickly found out that that he was embezzling money. So I had to go through all of that. I had to learn early on what it felt like to have a partner that was stealing from the backside, and you didn't even know that was happening. So then there was a transition into taking the business with another group of people, and we didn't have to start over. We just kind of had to retool a bunch of things and transition that. But then the business evolved quickly and grew quickly because I really got I fell into like the process or desire to kind of run storms all across the United States. Like we did hurricane work, storm work, fire work, flood work, all across the US. So by 2008, 2009, about the time that the economy was shifting, it was the $30 million a year organization with 125 plus employees doing work in as many as 19 different states. So it was a
Huge.
large organization. I mean, we grew it quick. And I think one of the, and I'm sure we'll get into a lot of this and all that good stuff, but I think one of the greatest lessons I learned was, by like 2008, 2009, I mean, we were printing money, right? I mean, I had all the toys, the houses, the cars, all of that fun stuff. And there was still a part of me that just did not feel fulfilled. So what I decided to do in 2008 was invest heavily into the real estate market. We got into real estate, and when all the economy and everything transitioned, we got caught holding about $15 million worth of residential real estate that was undeveloped. So we had banks like literally overnight calling notes, like saying, hey, John, we need you to put, $2 or $3 million into a CD tomorrow. And it's like, well, we have it, but that's not money that we were planning on. I mean, we're running interest only loans and building track homes and building spec homes and selling them as fast as we could build them. And then next thing you know, like we're getting caught with our hands in the cookie jar, and everything has to be liquidated. And I ended up filing bankruptcy in 2009, 2010. But then what was really, that was probably, people look at something like that and they're like, man, that's catastrophic. You're taking a giant company and like annihilating it in like the process of like 6 months to a year. But I look back on that stuff and I say, it sucked going through it. It was honestly one of the greatest things that ever happened to me in my business career, because it taught me the lesson of humility, right? So when you're printing money and you've got a truckload of money, a good buddy of mine that died of cancer, that was a professional baseball player, used to say, money just makes you more of who you already are, right? Mm. So if you're kind of a turd and you start making a truckload of money, you just become a bigger turd, right? So you become a more powerful turd. So that was me in my younger years. Like I had no sense of humility, no sense of judgment, things. I'm just the guy spending tens of thousands of dollars on random nonsense all the time. And going through the bankruptcy process, you learn in a blink, it could all be taken away from you, right? If you're not a good steward of it, you don't do right by people with it, it gets taken away really, really quickly. So that was the lesson that I had to learn in 2008, 2009, like be a good steward of what you're given, treat people well, and you'll do well with things. But if you don't, it can be taken away from you in a blink.
So how did your relationship at the time survive that process? I mean, being an entrepreneur is very difficult, and going through something like that obviously can deeply impact the family.
Oh my word. Yeah. By a thread, I would say that's the easiest way to describe it. I mean, my wife and I were really young when we got married. I mean, she was 20, turned 21 in our first year of marriage. I was 23, 24. And then by the time, I mean, you're talking like 7, 8, 9 years after us being married, we go through a catastrophic bankruptcy with a small child. And I built this multi-million-dollar home. We had to short sale the home. So we're moving a 10-month-old daughter out of a brand new house. And I mean, and this was like one thing after another. Most of this type of adversity like kills people, right? It like puts people in their grave. Like they get to a space where they just can't handle the pressure, and they just throw their hands up and they're like, I'm not going to be an entrepreneur anymore. The spouse is like, I didn't sign up for this shit, so I'm out. I mean, it's like, that whole thing happens. But, I think the good thing about adversity too, is it teaches us a lot, and if you're willing to stay with it and you're willing to kind of sit in the suck for a little bit, there's a lesson that always gets pulled out of it on the other side. And I didn't really learn that until several years later. I mean, it took me 3.5 years to pull my head out of the sand after a bankruptcy, because my identity was in my company, right? Yeah. Like that company was who I was. At least that's what I thought. And then I realized, 3 or 4 years later, it's bankruptcy is something that I did, right? I caused it, but it's not who I am. I'm not a bankrupt human being. And once I figured that out, once I'm like, oh, okay, so I can actually take what I learned and all of that and apply it and go build something again. Oh, okay, well, I'll go do that then. Instead of feeling sorry for myself, I'll go transition and do that. But I would honestly say, it took my wife longer to really get to the point where she trusted me again, where she's like, okay, he's not this irresponsible, fly by the seat of his pants, ready, fire, aim kind of guy. He's starting to like really understand the responsibility of being in business ownership and what it takes, and the process of building and rebuilding and, all of that stuff. So it took quite a while, to get through that stage for sure.
Yeah, it's a huge achievement, just even keeping a relationship together, just even being in business, because being in business, there's so many distractions on your energy and your time, let alone going through the literally perfect storm at that time, where so many entrepreneurs just got literally buried. So that process of rediscovering your identity, was there something that looking back that you did? Was there a process that you followed, or yeah, was there any specific process looking back that, sort of how you did that?
Yeah, this was before like like even before I started engaging coaches and understanding like the power of having coaches and mentors and all of that. I think really the transition that happened there was like I I had enough people around me that could kind of help me and guide me and kind of pull me out of that spot and just say, maybe you shouldn't own a business right away. Maybe what you should do is go sell, right? Because you can do that. That's a skill set that you have. And while you're trying to figure yourself out, why don't you just go sell for a little bit, right? So I did that for a period of time. I helped a company that was doing like 900,000 a year. I helped grow them to 6.2 million in 18 months. And it's like, I kind of just had to go through that process of regaining confidence. And it just happened to be, and we teach a lot of this now, but it just happened to be like little daily steps every day, like making a promise to myself and holding myself to the promise, and then doing that day in and day out, several days in a row before you get that. It's like that theory of compounding interest. It's the same philosophy, right? We end up moving mountains by picking up a rock and moving a rock first, right? So it's kind of the same thing. I just got back into the disciplines and the routine and the regiment that I knew, and started just taking little steps while I was trying to figure out what was going on in my head. And obviously, when you go through something like that, it's a relatively traumatic experience. I went through counseling and things like that to kind of just unpack it all, to try to figure out eventually that, okay, that's something that I don't like to use the term happened to me, because it didn't happen to me. I created it, right? It's an experience that I had to go through in order to learn a really valuable lesson on the other side. It just took me, about 3 years to really figure out that's what happened. Like I made a catastrophic decision that was very uncalculated. And then, like you're saying, the perfect storm happened. All the real estate economy transitions and changes. A lot of people got caught up in that. But in reality, had I just stayed with what I really knew and focused on what I was really good at, none of that would have happened. I got the shiny object syndrome and irresponsibly took some risks and some gambles in a space that I really didn't know anything about, and learned the lesson from it and extracted it and kind of just moved forward from there.
Yeah. So like that dynamic is as an entrepreneur where you're pushing into new territory or you're extending or expanding. Sometimes from the outside, other people that aren't entrepreneurs would look at some of that dynamic and go like, you're crazy.
You're crazy. Yeah.
Like it is, unless you've owned a business and they had teams working for you. Most people have no concept of the pressure, and just the everyday volume of decision making and the mental energy. Often there are little warning signs that will pop up, and it can be a real skill. And often, we get this wrong. It can be a real skill to work out what's the difference between a risk, and playing it safe, and then, still expanding. How do you know when you're sort of pushing things too far? Like, how do you, those warning signs, what would you say about that dynamic?
Okay. So I'll preface this by just saying, I don't recommend this for everybody, right? But I've got a book that's going to come out likely by the end of this year, possibly spring of next year. But the book is called Fail Your Ass Off: A Loser's Guide to Winning, right? And so one thing that I learned early in entrepreneurship was, and I don't know if this was just something I was born with or if it's just something that was instilled in me as a little kid. But the faster that I can fail, the faster, how, like if I'm willing to take a gamble and a risk on me and my ability to learn and my skill set and everything that I've worked to develop and worked hard to create, the faster that I'm willing to mess it up, the faster a lesson is going to be given to me, right? And I learned that early on, right? So I would like, as an example, like if I was going to go build something on someone's house, I would ask someone who I thought might know how to do it. But then if they didn't 100% know how to do it, I would just do it anyway and figure it out as I went, right? It's that old adage of like the entrepreneur jumps off the cliff and builds stuff on the way down, right? That's how I've always done it. I don't know another way to do it, right? Most people, because of, I often, from the psychological side of it now that I've studied a lot of, most people when they're younger though, their parents kind of put them in a bubble and kind of bubble wrap them a little bit. And instead of saying, go outside and mess a whole lot of shit up and scrape your knee and break your arm and get a bunch of stitches and whatever, they're trying to like put their arms around them and prevent all that from happening. The problem with that is coddling children creates a coddled adult, right? So if they don't get to experience pain and suffering to some degree, how are they know what it feels like when they get older and how to overcome it, right? So that's the same principle. When I was a little kid, and I wish times were like this now, they're not, but it's like, you know, my mom would be like, you guys get out of the house and don't come back into the house until the freaking street lights are on, right? So we were outside breaking shit all the time. And so I just applied that for whatever reason into my business. And I'm like, and I instill that in all my people in every organization that I've ever had. I'm like, don't be afraid to break something, right? Don't try not to cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process of breaking it, but don't be afraid to break it. Why? Because that's how you learn. That's how you're going to learn. Now, thank God, you know, some of that has evolved as you and I have gotten older and we've grown in our level of entrepreneurship. Now there's mentors and coaches. There's guys like us to go, hey, you hire me and pay me 10 grand. I'm going to show you where all the places that you're about to break something so you could avoid all that shit. You don't have to break all that shit. I'll just tell you right now what happens if you break it, right? So you're not paying me for all, you don't want to come into my environment and listen to all my wins. Like that's fun. We can share those stories over, you know, beer or something someday. But let me tell you about all the places where you're most likely to screw it up, right? And all you got to do is avoid that thing and you'll be successful. And that's how our clients win right now, right? So if you take all of my errors, right? And this is what, you know, I don't like to pat myself on the back, but it's like, if there's one spot that makes me a really great consultant or coach or whatever you want to call it, is it's like, I've been willing to take the risks to the degree that most people, if you put them in front of them, they're like, no way, no way. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm like, screw it. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'm the guy that'll take the flaming hot bottle of hot sauce and try it once just to see what the repercussions are. Right. So it's, if I don't experience that, the problem is what happens is the fear of the unknown sits in, right? If we won't lean into the suck, the pain and the suffering for a period of time, the fear of the unknown sets in, it logs itself in here. And then we become pre-programmed. Every situation that comes up against us, we start to walk it through. What's the worst thing that can happen here? Right. And it's backwards, right? I look at it like, you remember when you were a kid and your buddy sets up the ramp and you get on your bike, your mind doesn't start to go, well, what if I miss the ramp? What if the ramp breaks and I break my face, right? Your mind's thinking like, if I hit this thing at the right speed, this is going to be the baddest jump that I've ever done. And all your buddies are cheering you on. And then there's always one kid that's like, you're going to get hurt. And he's probably right, but we don't really give a shit. Those are the guys that grow up and they're like our CEOs, right? Like they're the guy that manages the analytics and tells us where things are going to go wrong. But we're the guys out front going, I'm going to try the jump. I'm gonna try the jump. And everybody, like you said, our friends and family, you're crazy, man. You got bigger cojones than I do. I'm gonna try the jump, right? So because, back to your question, because I've been willing to try that so many different times, it's real easy for me now at this point in my career to look at something, whether it's an investment, a business deal, whatever. I can see all the risks. They're as plain as day as, you know, it's like, driving down the road and seeing a pothole, right? I can see them. I can look at a business and go, here's the real risk to it. What are the unknowns, right? Where are we exposed? That's one of the greatest questions that I have entrepreneurs ask themselves all the time. If you sit here every single day, if you walk into your office every day and you just think to yourself, where am I exposed? Where are we weak? Where are we vulnerable? Where am I exposed? That's going to give you all the things in your organization that you need to work on right now, right? You don't need to guess. Just ask yourself. You don't need to worry about what the other guy's doing. You just ask yourself, where are we weak? Where are we vulnerable? Where are we exposed? Where are we strong? Where are we beating everybody? And how can we get better, right? If you just take those 6 things and you constantly run an inventory on those things, what are risks? What are risks? I mean, because it's like, we're going to go do something in the unknown. We're going to go create something that nobody's ever created before. Okay, so where are you weak? Where are you exposed? What do you not know? And what do you need to know? Who do you have to become in order to make this thing work? I mean, you know, what's the risk, right? At this point in time, I've broken so much stuff. I don't really know how much more I could break. At this point, I'm like repeating the same breaks if I break it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, but I think that's the key to all of it is there. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to have a really high tolerance level and willingness to just fail. Like,
yeah.
And I'll tell you, and you know, if somebody came in here today and took all of this from me, took all of it from me, took this office, the people, my house, the cars, all the money, I don't care. I don't care, because tomorrow I would wake up and rebuild all of it. And probably at 1/8 of the time it took me to build what I have in here right now, right? Because you can't take the skill set, can't take the knowledge.
It's who you've become.
Yep.
So that sort of stress tolerability, what are your thoughts on the relationship between like your physical health and your capacity to just, you know, tolerate stress?
Everything. It's everything. You know, and you know, we've been through I don't know if you've actually been through Warrior or similar programs to that, but it's like one thing that I've learned probably in the last 8 years is I schedule pain every single day. People, when I tell people that the first time, they're like, what the hell's wrong with you, right? When I actually learned to love pain, to be okay with you know, embracing the suck, everything in my life changed, right? So like people go through COVID and it was the first time that people experienced a large amount of adversity. Most people, it affected everybody, right? Everybody feels it. But guys like me, we experience that every single day to some degree. So when it happens, it's not that big a deal. It's just it's a speed bump, temporary setback. I don't look at it and panic. I look at it and go, we got to pivot different.
Yeah.
Not panic, pivot. We got to do something different, right? So that's kind of the what we do. But physically, every single day, I mean, like right now I do 2 workouts a day, right? And people are like, well, that's excessive. Is it? Because it's my willingness to, so I always say, if I bleed a little more in practice, I bleed a little less in the game. If I'm willing to bleed a little more in practice, I'm gonna bleed a little less in the game, right? Because I'm gonna know where to go and what to do when the rest of you are like hemorrhaging. I'm not going to be hemorrhaging because I prepped for this. So I look at all these, and I think one of the cheats that's available to us that I didn't have when I was younger, if you follow the most successful, impactful people on social media, when there's large amounts of adversity happening in the world or happening coming or whatever, you watch their level of preparedness and you just kind of emulate, or to the best of your ability, simulate and create some of that. The signs are all there. If you've got 40 people saying you better be preparing for a famine that's coming, and you're the guy over there with your hands in your pocket going, nah, it probably ain't gonna happen. But the signs are all there and things stack up. It's like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like you guys are being given a gift. And sometimes I'm like, because of information being so readily accessible, I feel like most people are like, they're starting to ignore it. It almost has numbed them down. But like what you were saying, from a physical standpoint, it is a necessity. I can only lead people to the capacity in which I'm leading myself, which means I gotta challenge myself every day to become the best version of me, or I have no right to challenge you or anybody else to do that work, right? I gotta remain in integrity with all of that.
Beautiful. So you're getting to work with a lot of entrepreneurs from different fields. With this current climate, I'm in Melbourne, Australia. We've been in lockdown now for like nearly 9 of the last 12 months. Lots of business owners have been affected, and I'm aware that this is similar to different degrees around the world. What are the different types of pivots that you're seeing happening? Obviously, that's a very broad sort of question, but for the business owners that you've been working with, what are some of the different types of pivots that you're seeing?
Yeah, I see. I think what's great at this point in history that we're in right now, on this climate that we're in, is you're seeing 2 really clear groups emerge, right? You're seeing The business owners that have been for the however length of time operating out of fear, and the business owners that have been operating out of certainty, right? There, you could see the two, it's becoming so distinct now, right? There's a group of people that are like, I don't really give a crap what anybody tells me or dictates to me is what needs to be done. I'm going to move on with my life, and I'm going to find a way to make shit happen. There's another group of people that are like, I have to comply. That's such a nasty word right now, but it's like, I got to be in this world of compliance. So I'm going to allow someone else to dictate what happens to me in my business, right? These people, in my mind, my opinion, don't deserve to have a business anyway, right? Because part of entrepreneurship is being willing to do things that most people are not willing to do. It's being willing to resist, to fight back, to persevere, to overcome. And if you don't have that in you, that if that's not like born in you or has been ingrained in you, you don't deserve to have that business anyway. So just give it up, surrender. That's what you're doing anyway. You might not be saying it, but that's what you're doing. You're surrendering. You're allowing someone else to dictate to you on how you operate. So this group over here that's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to continue to push forward. I'm going to continue to pivot. I'm going to continue to find a way. What's going to end up happening when all the smoke clears, those dudes are going to be left. Those people are going to be left because they were the ones willing to fight the fight that needed to be fought for all of the people that were afraid that were watching them, right? So the same dude that will ride that bike on that ramp with all the people in the background saying you're crazy is the same dude that perseveres and wins in the end because he's crazy enough to resist. He's crazy enough to go, you know what? I don't care what the outcome is of me jumping this bike over this ramp. If I wipe out, I wipe out. I'm willing to pay the price. That's the same dude that when everybody else is like, shut it down, stop, he's not complying. He's like, no, that's horseshit. Like, that's not the way it's supposed to be. As a business owner, entrepreneur, I was born with the mindset to overcome. So I'm going to find a way to overcome, right? So that's what people are doing. They're either finding a way to overcome and they're pivoting dramatically, or they're just like, I'm all up in my feelings today. I think I'm just going to quit.
Yeah.
That's about as simple as it gets.
Yeah, there's a very clear division, and
very
you could say it's been deliberately polarized that way. Obviously, we can't crystal ball what the future is going to hold, but what sort of habits? I know you've already mentioned a couple. What sort of habits would you sort of recommend entrepreneurs have in this kind of climate where there is a lot of uncertainty?
One of my great friends and mentors, guy owns a $4 billion company in the US called Select Blinds. One thing he says to me all the time, when adversity is here, all we have is our basics, right? When adversity punches you in the face, all you have are the basics of which you've worked on a regular basis, right? So what do the basics look like? Your health and fitness. If you're not healthy right now, get your ass healthy right now. You're going to need that, right? That's how you mentally, you can't have poor mental health, but good physical health. Those two things don't typically go together. If you get your mental health in line and your mind in line, and those things are in unison, you can overcome a lot of things, right? So I practice that every day. So I live I call it the SHARP method, right? So I sweat every day. I make sure you guys see it. I hydrate like crazy every single day. Why? Because this is our bodies are like, yeah, man, our bodies are like mostly water, right? Yeah. So by putting chemicals in it like soda and tea and all the other crap, you're making it harder for your body to stay hydrated. You need hydration. That's how the mind works. That's how the inner gut system works, right? People forget that, right? So sweat, hydrate, appreciate. In a climate like this, you have to be so damn appreciative. It's so easy to look around and go, look at all the stuff that's going wrong. And then all of a sudden your focus shifts to, and I believe honestly, with all of me, what we feed grows. So if I'm constantly focused on what's going wrong, more shit's going to go wrong. Right. So I got to stay in the world of appreciation. I got to wake up. I appreciate waking up. God gave me another day. I get another day, right? Whatever that looks like, I get another day. I get to appreciate coming to a place of work. I get to appreciate that I have a house, shelter. I got clothes. I got money. I give appreciation for all this stuff. Right. So the R section of it is I'm a big reader. Right. So I don't need to sit on social media all day long. I don't need to be in the news all day long. I'm going to the history books and to the books that were written before me, and I'm just soaking up all of that right now, because now is the time that if you spend time in quiet study, it's crazy how much your mind will open things up. Like, you'll see things differently than everybody else who's in a constant state of chaos, right? Most people's internal systems are stuck in a fight or flight mode. They're in a constant source of panic. You're seeing more and more and more cases of anxiety and all that stuff popping up because people are overstimulated. They're on their phones, and it's stimulating the crap out of them. So their internal systems are like fried, right? So I'm like, no, I'm going to spend time in quiet space. And so I read a lot. And the P for sharp stands for prayer. I spend a lot of time in prayer and meditation, right? If I just can learn how to calm my body, right? I've been tactically trained on how to shoot a firearm. One of the things that they teach you when learning how to shoot a firearm under pressure and duress is how to breathe and calm yourself, right? If you try to shoot a firearm at somebody that's coming at you that also has a firearm, and you're able to calm yourself, you're more likely to hit the target than you are to be hit, right? But most people, they've never fired a firearm under pressure or duress. So the first time they do it, they're like scared, their adrenaline's running a million miles an hour, and they shoot it, they're way off, right? It's just way off. And I don't care if that's like to shoot a deer in the forest or a bird. You gotta be able to calm yourself enough to actually do the right thing. So I practice prayer and meditation, and that's where all that calming comes from. And like you said, that heightened level of stress, man, people are eating like crap, pouring garbage into their body, and still expecting their body to perform at a high level while maxing it out in like toxic data all day long. So it's no wonder like we're seeing like divorce and kids being abused and all that at a catastrophic level. It's because people are allowing so much toxicity into their system that they're not just like pushing all that away long enough to restore themselves every day. So we started this, and we use the word sharp because it's like, this is how I stay sharp every single day. Sweat, hydrate, appreciate, read, and pray. That's it. It's so simple, but that's how I stay present, sharp every day. Like I don't take a day off, right? That's just because I'm able to stay in that space.
That's powerful. So the prayer element of this, faith is and belief in God and whatever the divine mind or divine force. It's a very interesting.
Yeah.
It's obviously a deep subject. One of the things that I've noticed in myself and working with other entrepreneurs as well, that element of faith is, I won't say it's a secret weapon, but it can become like an anchor that it just creates a very, very different level of certainty in a very uncertain world. But there's sometimes things within us that get in the way of our relationship between whatever this divine mind is. And prayer, or those quiet times, those things will often rise to the surface, those intuitions or blockages, or maybe things that have happened in the past where you're aware there needs to be some kind of reconciliation or made right.
Mm-hmm.
What are your, and I know you've posted some comments around this in the past, what are some of your processes around that dynamic of that reconciliation, or just this dynamic of faith and reconciliation?
Yeah. So one of two things runs us all the time, right? It's either people can call it different things, the light or the dark, the good or the bad. I try not to label it a whole lot. It's just two different sets of energy, right? It's the peacefulness, calmness, non-chaotic energy, or it's the very chaotic energy that elicits like anxiety. Could elicit like a warrior type of mentality, things like that. I believe that both of them are very useful at the right amount of time. I think a lot of people have lost the connection to know when to use which, right? I think they stay in that space where they're feeling like this constant tug and battle of each one of them trying to play out throughout the day. And so it creates an internal chaos, which then by nature, like if you look at the biblical side of it, it's like what's in the heart typically gets spews out in words, right? So, but in reality, that's that constant battle of that good energy, bad energy, goodness, darkness, light, darkness, whatever you want to call it. But I think and at least in my experience, when I'm in prayer or meditation, I can reconcile those things, right? I can give appreciation to both the sides, right? I can say, okay, this side of me needs to run the meeting today. I don't need to walk in this meeting and light everybody up. I don't need to step on people's throats. I don't need to create more chaos. I don't need to go in with a heavy hand, right? There's a time and place for that. But I think in this instance, if I lead with empathy and love and compassion and whatever, and meekness, right? Meekness is not the same as weakness, right? It's meekness. It's coming in with a humbleness, a servant attitude of how can I help you become better. Now I'm able to transition and help people transform, right? I need this side though too, and people struggle with that. It's like, okay, I'm going to be this meek person. I'm going to lead with love and compassion. But on the battlefield, man, I'm not going to walk up to somebody who's trying to harm my wife and kids and ask them if they want to just hug it out, right? I need that guy to light up and say, if you're trying to harm my wife and kids, you're going to get harmed in the process, right? That's just part of it, So that's why, like it's behind us. That's why we've developed the whole entire go to war mindset, because it's this constant willingness to reconcile that battle every single day, especially now where we're all so tweaked out all the time. We're also, poked by different outside sources. That you have to be able to internally calm yourself enough to go, today in this moment, this is the side of me that I need to shine. This is the side of me that I need to come with, right? And so many people, because they're just stuck in that constant fight or flight, they can't reconcile the differences. So what happens is when they're put under duress or stress or chaos, they can't. I think it's an art, man. Like, I think it's a gift. If you can calm yourself in chaos, have you ever been in that space where it's like all hell breaking loose around you, but you're able to just breathe it out and calm yourself around, and there's no chaos coming out of you, and everybody's like, what's going on with this guy? Is he a sociopath or a psychopath? And it's like, no, I've learned to be calm here, but you need to be warned. This calmness, there's an explosion about to happen, and you don't want to be on the other side of that, right? So it's like, I think it's also a gift. Like, I have 2 little girls, and I don't even have to say words to my little girls, right? Like, they can just see it in dad. Like, when I'm calmed down and I can just kind of look across the room and I can just shake my head like, that's not okay. It's like an immediate about face. Like, they've seen that side of me come out and they don't like it. And they're like, we're not trying to unleash that guy today. We'll just chill out, So I think prayer, meditation, whatever you want to call it, right? I'm not here to judge what deity you decide that you want to hang out with or whatever. But for me, praying to God, that God gives me the strength and the energy and keeps me grounded in my faith. That's a big deal to me. And that's what reconciles that darkness inside of me, to where I only have to use it when, like, I can slow myself down and pray about it. And I can feel like God, like, opening the door and saying, it's time to let it out, let it out, But I think it's become way more powerful, because when I actually do have to use it, and the people that are really familiar with me are around me, seeing me unleash it, open it up, they're like, this must be serious, right? Because he doesn't just lead in with that at all the time, right? So I think that's a gift. I think that's a blessing and a gift that everybody is given, but most people just don't know how to use it because they won't slow down enough to learn how to use it.
Yeah. So this slowing down, sometimes in the process of that, we'll get these inner promptings, whether you call it the voice or whether you label it, however you label it. What is your experience with that, and what is your advice to other entrepreneurs that are sometimes getting a nudge to do something that may not be what they logically think they should do?
Right.
What's your experience
Have you ever heard
with
the
that?
term? Yeah. So there's a multitude of ways to go about it. but have you ever heard the term success doesn't reward the wrong people, right? That's a term that I say often. Success does not reward the wrong people. What that typically inner voice is the inner voice is the guide that tells us what direction we want to go to. Most of the time, the reason why people won't listen to it is because they haven't reconciled or come to grips with the price that has to be paid when they decide, okay, the voice is correct. I trust the voice, but I also I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I was like, we were talking about what causes that, right? Like they know, they can feel it inside of them that that's the direction that they need to go. They have to, like they've heard that voice for years. They try to sedate it. They don't want to hear it because they understand if I go that way, the price that gets paid, it might be a loss of a relationship. It might be a loss of a friend. It might be a loss of a job. It might be a loss of something, right? The price of making that decision is so great that in the moment, they can't come to grips with it, right? They know that it's what they should be doing, but it's like, it's going to cause me a lot of pain if I do it, right? It's going to cause me some suffering if I do it. But staying stuck and not doing it is also really painful. So what happens is they try to say, well, which is the least amount of pain? And that's where people go wrong. That right there is where people go wrong. They're trying to find the least amount of pain, but we don't do anything great without a price of pain. And like, if you want to go get big at the gym, if you want to go get strong at the gym, if you want to go learn a new skill or whatever, it's going to be painful because you're tearing things apart in order to become something different, right? You're dying to old to become something new. And that's the same. And that every time that door opens, success is not just going to hand us something. It's going to say, there's a price to pay. You have to reconcile the price. You have to be willing to go pay that price, right? And most people won't. You could legitimately put, let's just call it a monetary thing. You could go put $50 million in a bucket across the street and light that street on fire. Light that street on fire and say, I swear to you, I promise you with everything in me, you will survive if you go through the fire. You just have to go through the fire and get the bucket, and the bucket is yours, man. And most people, they're like, no, I'll get burned. This will happen. This will happen. They will legitimately talk themselves out, even after someone like you or me said, I swear to you, you will survive. Now, will you get burned? Yes, 100%. Will it hurt? Yes, it'll hurt. That's 50 million bucks in that bucket, man. Like, what are you willing to go through or endure? Most people are like, I don't give a shit how much money's in that bucket. I'm not walking through that fire because it's going to hurt too bad. Bro, you're broke ass right now. You are flat ass broke. You fight every single day for the pennies that you have in your bank account, but you could just endure a little bit of pain and walk across the street and have all that end. And they're like, no, I'm not going to do it. Right. So it's like, that voice in us is what God, or whatever you want to call it, put in our soul and said, I promise you, if you trust me and you listen to it and you're willing to reconcile the price, what's on the other side is literally everything. Every time you close your eyes, you can see it in your mind. You can see it. You can feel it in your soul. I'm just asking you to have some faith and walk across the street. And they're like, no, I'd rather just stay here. This is less painful here. And it's like, well, guess what? The bevy of pain is going to get rained upon you in some degree anyway. So wouldn't you rather just take the walk and be done with it? You know, and it's crazy because that's kind of what's going on in the world today, right? We're watching this thing evolve and everybody sees it. Everybody sees it. Cognitive dissonance is a real thing. They're like, they don't want to see it. I don't want to see it, but I see it. But I'm really hoping in the back of my mind, that shit just kind of reconciles itself. I hope it just fixes itself. And the sun comes up tomorrow and everything is better. Everything is all good. And and then there's a group of us going, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go to war at some point in time. Yeah. And I know you don't want to hear that. I know you don't. I know you don't. I know you don't. There might even become a time that I'll just go to war for you and I will settle this shit. But when that time comes, you better have my back. Because if I'm willing to walk across the fire and get the bucket of money and bring the bucket of money back to you and feed everybody on the street, there better be at least a parade. Right? So that's what's happening in the world right now, man. Like all of us, we see it right now. And we're like, we're not quite to the point, that we got to go confront some dudes about it, but we're almost
It's
there.
close. It's getting very close.
Almost there, right? And there, I promise you, like, people don't get it. There's a whole group of us that are just like, we're the guys sitting in the chairs just going, please don't ask us to stand up. Like, just don't, it's like the guy being confronted in the bar and the guy's talking all that shit. And you're just like, dude, I've asked you like 20 times, please go sit down. Don't make me stand up, because they know immediately when we stand up, it's all hell is going to break loose. Right. So it's like, we're being taunted right now. Taunt. How far are they going to, it's like the bully with the lunch money, man. How many times am I going to take your money before you just stand up and punch me in the mouth? And we're right there, man. Right there.
Yeah, certainly here in Melbourne, it's starting to unravel.
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
It's getting ugly, and don't want to say too much on this directly, but there are people that are ready. So it's interesting.
Unleashed.
It's interesting times ahead. Now, your company, Smash Company, you're helping entrepreneurs in this like unprecedented times. Maybe can you just speak to us a little bit about what your business is doing and some of the programs that you've got on offer at the moment?
So most people come to me and say, I got a marketing problem, I got a sales problem, I got a hiring problem, I got an internal operations problem. What I know from all the years of being in business and from all the mistakes that I've made, those are symptoms, right? If I'm an irresponsible coach or consultant, what I do is I treat the symptom. I hand them a placebo, something, and I'm like, here, let's put a Band-Aid on that symptom. I don't do that. I don't operate that way, right? So think of me as like a holistic doctor. I'm not trying to write you a prescription to solve a symptom. I'm looking at the root, okay? So you got a lead problem. You got a sales problem. You got an operations problem. Where's the real problem? Those are all symptoms, right? So you got all these warning signs of a heart attack impending. What's the real issue? You don't want to change the mindset and actually start eating better to help yourself. You don't want to sit down and actually learn how to become the best marketer that you could possibly be, so you don't have to pay another dude to rip your ass off. You don't want to learn all the sales processes. You don't want to learn all the operations. Do you know the real problem is you're lazy as shit? So if we can fix that, if we can actually get you refocused back on your purpose, back on your mission, back centered on core values and all the stuff that you're working to create, all of those problems will subside. All those symptoms will subside, because mentally you'll look at it different. You'll look at it and go, I don't have a lead problem. You know what the problem is with the lead problem right now is I haven't become who I need to become in order to stop that, in order to make that go away. So I got to stop looking for the shortcut. I got to stop paying a bunch of dudes to try and solve the problem for me when they don't even understand exactly what I do in my own organization. Yet I'm calling them and saying, can you give me leads? Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? Because that's just a temporary fix. So what I'd like to do inside of our process is I like to do what's called an inventory check. Where are you right now? Where are you weak? Where are you exposed? Kind of like what we talked about earlier. And how do we arm you, right? So again, I look at everything like a process of like going to war, right? If I got to send you into a battlefield, you're not going to be able to pay some dude to fight for you. That dude's going to be fighting for himself and his family and all that stuff. Why would you treat your business like that? Do you know who expects you to fight for people? Is the people that are working for you. They expect you to be the number one fighter. They expect you to be the load carrier. They expect you to be the example. Yet for whatever reason, all these people out here that own businesses, they're like, well, I'll just pay someone to be the example. It doesn't work that way. The culture ebbs and flows with us. The culture ebbs and flows with us, right? So if I have a lead gen problem, guess who needs to solve the lead gen problem? This dude. Yeah. If I got a sales problem, guess who needs to solve this dude? I got a whole bevy of people in here, a whole truckload of them in here who all have the capacity to do that. But if they can't figure it out, if they're sorting through stuff and they can't find a way, I can't just go, ooh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I guess I'll just find somebody. You know what I do? I go, bring all that shit in here. Let's sit down at the big conference room table. Let's work through where we're really having issues. Let's create a process and something going on. Let's solve it. Let's solve the problem, right? So that's the same thing when people come into my world and they come to our events, it's like, all I need is a giant dry erase board. Tell me what's going on in your world right now. We get to the root, man, like to the root. So when people are like, what is Smash all about? I smash all the limiting beliefs that keep the entrepreneur stuck. That's what we do. That's the simplest version of exactly what we do. And there's a lot of people that won't work with me for one reason, because they know they come into my world and they pay me some money to figure out where the problem is. I'm going to find it, and they might not like it, right? So it's like, it could be wrong person or wrong. You know how many people we've gone into? We own a software that does personality profiling and assessments, right? So I don't care if you got 500 employees, I can assess everybody in your organization and tell you who's in the right seat, who's in the wrong seat, and who needs to be fired in a blink, right? And so imagine going into an organization and telling an owner, you need to fire your top 3 sales reps. Why? Because they're toxic to your culture. Everybody that you hire in, they're infecting. Every single time you bring somebody new in, they infect them. You got to get rid of them. Oh, well, what's going to happen to our bottom line? What's going to happen to your bottom line if you don't, man? You're not going to have people for much longer, because they're all going to quit. We saw it in their assessments. They're unhappy as hell. So it's just truth, right? It's like, I'm going to take all your stories and all the crap that you've chosen to believe for a really long period of time. We're going to sweep all that crap out. We're going to get you back to zero, and then show you how to grow and scale the company and build it in a way where the company serves you. You're not being held hostage to your organization anymore. That's what we do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So if some of the listeners want to get in contact with you, do you have online programs, or are most of those live? Or
we do. We actually have an online program called Build the Business, right? So it's like all the fundamental foundational stuff of what you need to do to make sure that your business is on a solid foundation, right? Most of the time people build a business, it's like building a house on the sand. It's only a matter of time before one catastrophic decision is made. It takes the whole thing out, right? And I've been there, so I know what that feels like. So I know what it takes to build that foundation and get the core. They can jump in to one of our programs and just do nothing but hang out in the academy for a little while if that's what they want to do. So it's called Build the Business Academy. But the fastest way to find information about us is www.thesmashco.com. That's our website. Everything that we do is on the site.
Beautiful. And your Go to War podcast?
Yeah, so we're on we host it on the iTunes side and on the Android side. So if you go into the podcast section of your phone and you just type in the words "Go to War," the podcast populates right away. And honestly, listen, if you're an entrepreneur and you're just looking, you're like, I don't want to invest any money with this dude until I get to know this dude, start at episode 1 of the podcast. And I promise you, you'll get like 10 episodes in and you'll be like, what is happening right now? I feel like I need to like make some catastrophic changes in my life, just in general. And I keep it very current, right? I'm doing episodes every single week. So as the country changes, as the climate changes, as the world changes, we're talking about all kinds of things. So it's very informative, and I like to make it really tactical, right? So I'm like, every single episode, I'm like, does this apply to you? If it applies to you, here's how you undo it, or here's how you make it work, right? So it's very, very tactical.
Yeah, there's a ton of value in there. So for any of the listeners, highly recommend that podcast as well. Well, that hour has just literally blown past, and again, very grateful for your time, and
Sure.
deeply appreciative of your insights. And again, like I've been following you for a long time, and when you're buying different cars, you know, you've got a number of exotic cars that I'm like, oh man, we don't get to see as many of those here in Australia, and it's inspiring, and it's been inspirational to me to see your journey, and the company that you've built now is doing incredible work. So deeply appreciative of your time, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I greatly appreciate it.
Beautiful. All right, thanks, John. Take care.
All right, all the best to you.